Yes, we are. Good morning, folks. We're live on LinkedIn. We're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube and we are live on TikTok as well. So good morning, everybody. It's a dark morning out there. It feels a bit cold. I'm not sure what the temperature is. But hopefully we'll have a dry day ahead of us. I haven't looked at the weather forecast, so that is not the weather forecast. I'm just hoping. So anyone who was here last week, my name is Mark Beggs. I've been running businesses for the last 30 plus years. Some businesses have gone extremely well, some businesses have gone terrible. And that's the nature of being your own boss and running your own business. Some of them work out really well and some of them don't. So I'm doing this show every morning called Mark's Business Check-In. We do it at 7:30 for about 20 minutes every single morning. And we look to have you along in the morning time. If for any reason you cannot come to us in the morning, then you can just do catch up on our YouTube channel at mindseyeducation.com. If you listen to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, you'll see it there scrolling across the end of your screen, the details of where you can find the shows. And also my email address is there, markbeggs@gmail.com. If you want to send in any questions or any queries, please do. If you're on TikTok, you can ask the questions there. I should be able to see them from where I'm sitting. And also on all your channels, you can send in your questions and they'll come up. They should come up on my screen. So this morning, we're just going to talk about mental health and the challenges of running your own business. Well, I suppose, I'll tell you a little story now in a second, but one of the biggest challenges I've heard from people who run their own business is that they find it very lonely because they're trying to put on two fronts, in the sense that they're trying to put on one front that things are going fantastic and things are going well and everything is brilliant, even though things are not. And because if they employ staff, they don't want staff to know how things really are, because they don't want staff looking for new jobs. They don't want staff suddenly deciding not to come to work because they feel the company isn't doing well. They don't want anything like that happening. So they do put up a front, but putting up that front is a cost to it. There's a cost to your mental health, because in a way you're always lying to yourself and lying to everybody else about how things really are. Now, when things are tough, you cannot walk out there and tell your staff that business is terrible and business is going mad, it isn't going great, because employees don't want to hear that. They really, really do not want to hear how things really are. I remember many years ago when I was running Indigo, we had one member of staff who felt, they were representing all the staff members, and this young lady felt that they needed to know more what was going on in the company. They didn't want to just hear how things really are on a weekly basis. They want to be involved in somehow the management of the company. And all the staff felt they needed to know more. So I said, okay, what we'll do is this person can come into the manager meeting once a week and take part on behalf of the staff. And to me, that was the perfect solution. So this person, who'd been with the company for a while, was not part of the management team, but she was representing the staff, and she wanted to come in and then go back out and brief the staff and maybe marketing initiatives or how things are going. But her first manager meeting, we had a challenge in that we had a big issue that week in trying to get the funds to pay the wages. And we had a lot of money due into us, and we were chasing a lot of money. And we spent a fair portion of the manager meeting talking about how to get money in. And this is just before we were bought by Aircom. So how are we going to get money in? Who owed us money, who's going to chase that money, and what would happen if the money wasn't in by Friday to pay the monthly wage bill. And so that took up a good bit of meeting, because we needed to make sure that we had the cash in to pay the wages on the Friday. After the manager meeting, this member of staff came to me and said they no longer wished to be part of the management meetings. And I asked why. And they said that one meeting made them very stressful, because suddenly they were now privy to the knowledge that maybe the wages would not be paid on Friday. And they didn't want that knowledge. They wanted the knowledge that when they go home every evening, that when they go back in the work the next day, the job is there and they will be paid what they were due on when they were due. They didn't want the knowledge, and this person didn't want the knowledge. that there was an issue paying the wages on Friday because we had to chase money. So suddenly, because when you're part of a management team, even though you may not own the business, you are responsible for certain elements of that business. So this person now felt they had to go back and tell the rest of the staff, which they weren't willing to do because they didn't want all the staff worrying for the next 4 or 5 days about where they're going to get paid on Friday. So they felt they'd asked for this responsibility, but they didn't know what the responsibility was and how much it was going to affect them. So they never came to any more management meetings. And that's the one thing about running your own business is that when you're running your own business, there's certain information that you're not going to tell your staff. You're not going to tell your spouse. You're not going to tell your partner. You're not going to tell people, because if people knew everything that was going on within your business, one, probably your customers will not do business with you. Number two, your staff might decide to leave you because they're not sure whether you're going to get paid on Friday. Now, the reality is there's a huge amount of businesses out there in Ireland and the UK who, business owners like yourselves who are coming into work today, who are worrying already about how they're going to pay the bills, the wages on Thursday or Friday at the end of this month. They're worrying about that already. And these are well-known brand names. These are well-known companies. These are companies that if you do business with them, you think they're solid and they're safe because you're looking at them from a certain angle. And it's like an iceberg. You're seeing the business from above the water. So you're seeing all the good bits, all the fancy branding, all the fancy sales, all the things going on, all the positive speak. You're seeing all of that. But what you're not seeing, as any business owner will tell you, will be all the problems underneath. And when you're a business owner, you have to take all these problems on board and you have to keep them in your head and you have to try and prioritize them as best you can. And one thing I say to people, especially I say in my new book, You Need a Neck Like a Jockey's Bollocks, which you can buy on our shop at mindseyeducation.com. One of the things I say to people is, you need to find someone, a shoulder to cry on. You need to find someone, there's a whole chapter in that book about this. You need to find someone that you can talk to in confidence. Someone who won't judge you, who won't ask you, why did you do that stupid thing or anything like that, but who will listen to you. Because sometimes the hardest thing is to get your problems from in here out there. And when you get them out there, suddenly you can look at them. And if you're dyslexic like me, you can look at them in 3D and see what all the things are going wrong in the business and stuff like that. But finding that person to talk to is a huge challenge for a lot of companies and for a lot of entrepreneurs. Because when you find that person to speak to, it makes a huge difference to your mental health. Because even speaking out loud your problems makes them come to life. And when you make your problems come to life, suddenly you see possible solutions to them. But if you keep them wrapped up in your head every day, all day long, that causes an awful lot of stress and it causes an awful lot of sickness as well. And you've all heard a story about, I said to you, I told a story on Friday, and it's a true story. You can listen to the show, that show last Friday on YouTube at Mind's Eye Education. Dennis O'Brien having to travel up to Northern Ireland looking for a loan of £100,000 to pay his wage bill for that week. And the person who promised him the money didn't have it, so he had to go back down to Dublin looking for the money elsewhere. He got the money, and he eventually sold his company for over £200 million. And there's many business owners who sell their companies. And I listened to one very recently who only after they sell it will verbalize and tell people how close they came to a good few times of closing the business down, how close they came to calling it a day. I was listening to Mark Little talking about his first company, and his first company, which he sold for a lot of money, many, many millions, that I think it was the first Christmas or second Christmas since the business, when he was driving up to Galway, I believe it was, to see for his wife's family at Christmas time. He was worried all the way up how he was going to tell his wife that basically the business was gone. They'd run out of money. He couldn't find any more money, and they're going to have to close down the business. And when he finally told his wife, what she said to him was, well, you'd have to find something else to do. And that gave him a massive sense of relief. that here was somebody supporting him and working with him and calling it as it is. Yes, he would have to find something else. It was as simple as that. He would have to find something else to do because now he was an entrepreneur. He'd left RT on a guaranteed salary, a guaranteed job for life. He'd left all that behind, went out on his own, and now, probably for the first time, seeing the downside of running your own business and how it can help affect you. So he drove from Dublin all the way up to Galway, worrying all along the trip how he was going to break that news. Now, he didn't have to close down the business. He was working with somebody who helped raise the finance over Christmas to keep the business going. And then he sold it for many, many, many millions a time after that. So there's many businesses, and if you listen to the owners and read their stories, but they only tell you those stories after they've sold the business or after something has happened. Mainly because if he told you that story now, you probably as a supplier wouldn't do business with them because you wouldn't be confident they can supply you. And that's why people who are entrepreneurs, self-employed people, they don't like telling people how it is. But that's why they suffer from the mental health. So if you're running your own business, one of the big challenges you're gonna have to find someone who you can talk to, someone who you can tell it as it is to them, and maybe a partner, maybe a spouse. An awful lot of business owners don't like bringing all the challenges of work home because they believe that if the business is in trouble or facing financial hardship or there's something going on within the business, that if they tell their spouse or partner, well then they're basically in a way passing on the guilt and bringing that unknown into the house. And they don't want that unknown into the house. They don't want to maybe then their kids hearing it or other family members hearing it. They don't want that going into the house. I remember, if your business has been doing well for a while, people will probably look at you and say how well you're doing, and you'll hear people say, God, you're fantastic and your business is great. Ain't you a great person? Ain't you a great fella, a great girl, a great lady, whatever. Because they believe, because you were doing so well, but then suddenly you hear a bump in the road. And that bump in the road may be in your mind so serious that you might have to close down the business. So that is why an awful lot of people who are self-employed, they don't want to tell the people what's going on. But that is also why it's so important to find someone to tell. I remember when we were running Doherty's advertising agency. For the first 3 years, business was going fantastic. We were winning a lot of business, and we'd lost 1 or 2 contracts, but we'd also won the Suzuki business. We won the Maltese Tourist Board. We'd won the launch of the Euro that we ran the campaign for when we went from punts to Euro. And so we'd won a lot of business. We were turning over about 19 million. So we were running a lot of business. But I mean, one mistake I made, and from experience at the time, I wouldn't have said it was my mistake, but we gave one client too much credit. To an extent, it was a new Dublin newspaper called Dublin Daily Newspaper. And I believed, and other people told me it was, fully financed and everything was going fantastic. Now, they weren't selling many copies because they're going up against the Herald. So they went, and the Independent. So they weren't doing that well at the moment. But they were trying to make inroads and trying to get ads, and they had the journalists and getting stories and all that type of stuff. So they're trying to make an impact. But when they went bust, they owed us, or they owed me, £500,000. And even though we thought we could work through that loss, which was a huge loss. I told very few people about that loss. My management team knew. The people within the business did not know. We didn't tell them how much money they owed us after closing down. And the banks wanted to drop us and they did drop us because they believed we shouldn't have given out that amount of credit. Even though for the previous 3 years, we sent the bank a monthly report on how well we were doing, and they held us up as being one of the best buy-ins management teams they've ever had, right? But that didn't mean a damn thing because they're bankers. And bankers are, as someone who's dyslexic, I always say bankers, like, is one of the words that probably spells wrong, but they are very short-term people. They don't care if the previous 3 years you're doing fantastic. They just wanted this week. One of your clients have closed down. One of your customers have closed down, owing you £500,000. They don't like that. They've lost confidence in you. So even though, and I went around to a number of our suppliers trying to say, look, we'll stay in business if you can support us. We've been hit with this bad debt. Everyone said yes except RTE, because as a government body, RTE had no interest in helping us out, and that's why we had to close the company. But even to the moment we told all the 60 staff we were closing it, they didn't know we were closing the business. They still all went home every evening in bliss, thinking everything was okay. But I was in turmoil because I'm going to have to close down this business after a number of years of leading the management buy-in. But also, I was very much aware then at that stage that even though we were owed about another $1.5 million by other people, all of it was debt that was going to be paid and had been paid every single month and always on time. Suddenly, I was trying to keep what's happening within the company quiet because I knew it would affect people who we were doing business with. It would affect suppliers who didn't want to do business with us because they thought we wouldn't be able to pay them. And also customers were going to be very slow in one, placing business with us, and two, paying us. Because here's the challenge when you're running your own business. If you close it down, you may be owed £1,000 from suppliers today. But the reality is most of them suppliers will try and get out paying you because your business is gone. They will try and not pay you or pay you as little as possible. So even though you believed all that money was collectible, and it is collectible if your business had to continue on as it was, right? It was no longer collectible as soon as it got on the grapevine that your business was in trouble. So I had to close down that business. And it was the first real big business I had to close down. And it was very traumatic. Extremely, and I talk about it in the first chapter of my book, my new book. I'm going to keep saying this. You need a neck like a jockey's bollocks. And because you don't expect when you go into business to ever have to close down. When you go and work for yourself, you don't expect that you're never going to be able to pay someone. And I've come across people say, "Oh, you didn't pay me this, you didn't pay me that," who have never been self-employed, who've never worked for themselves. And if you've never worked for yourself, you've never been self-employed, you don't know what it's like to go into business for yourself. When you go into business for yourself, as anybody out there listening who's self-employed, you go into business hoping it will work extremely well, that you can grow a business, that you can feed your family, pay all your outgoings, and have a very good living. That's why you go into business. You don't go into business to close down and not pay creditors and not pay suppliers. You never go into business to do that. You always do go into business believing that the idea you have will work out. So that's why it's important to find someone to talk to find a mentor, to find someone who you can confide in, who you believe won't make judgments and will listen to you and will give you sound advice and will just listen to what you have to say. Finding that mentor, or finding that, as I call it in my new book, a shoulder to cry on. I don't mean physically cry, even though I've been there with some people have physically cried. I mean someone that will listen to you, and someone that doesn't get put off by what you're going to tell them or overwhelm themselves. Ideally, someone who's run their own business or is running their own business, maybe not in the same industry as you, but maybe someone that has been running a business longer than you have and can give you practical advice. Because many people who run their own business get up on a Monday morning wondering how they're going to pay the phone bills, how they're going to keep the lights on, how they're going to pay the rent, how they're going to get new business into the company to cover those overheads, how they're going to collect the money that's due to them, that's outstanding, within the next 4 or 5 days in order to pay the wages on Friday. That's it. It's like a wheel in a mouse cage. It keeps going round and round and round. And the only time you stop worrying about that is when you sell your business. When you sell your business and you have money in your pocket, then you can stop worrying about paying. You can stop worrying about paying the bills and all that type of stuff. But no matter what size company you are, these worries are always there. When you're running your own business or you're running a company on behalf of somebody else, you still have that worry every week. Because the day you stop worrying about that is the day you have to close down the business. It's as simple as that. So do find that person. It's important that you find that person to keep yourself sane. It's really important you go out there and find that person that can help you stay sane. And it's important that you do lift up the phone and call someone, even to meet someone for a cup of coffee, and just tell them what's going on and shoot the breeze and try and get some of your problems out there. Because we all have the same. It's just they're on different scales and they're on different levels. And our problems are slightly different at certain times. But when you boil it all down, being self-employed and working for yourself carries an awful lot of risk to your mental health. And managing that risk is your job, is to find someone to help you to manage that risk and manage your head and manage your health and manage your stress levels and all that. They won't go away. Even when you find this person, your levels of stress and your levels of worry will not go away. But at least you're getting out there and you're talking about it to someone. It may help you run your business much better. It may help you manage yourself much better. It may help you feel better that when you wake up, you might be clearer on what you have to do today. That's why they say you should write your goals down. Because when you write them down, what are you doing? You're taking them from your head, you put them down on paper, you're seeing them out in front of you. You can now move them around and rewrite them and see what is wrong, what is right, what way do I have to go, what way do I not have to go. So that's why it's important to find someone to help you with your mental health. All right, thanks for joining me this morning. I'm going to end now on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. We've been on about 21 minutes. I always say I would try and keep it to 20 minutes, which is important. So if you do have any questions, just email me at markbeggs@gmail.com. And don't forget, I'm here every weekday from 7:30 till about 10 to 8. Again, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.